A young man walks through the night against a mighty wind, fog everywhere. In his cupped hands, a tiny light that can go out at any moment. Behind him, a gigantic black figure following. He knows two things at once. He is terrified and he must keep the light burning. This is a dream Jung had at 19. Last week, someone who watches this channel wrote to me about it with a question, and today I want to try and answer it. Here is what Valentin wrote. This dream of Jung came up for me again recently, and I was wondering whether or not I was too preoccupied with getting to know the self and being negligent with my small personal light. What are your experiences with what Jung calls number one and number two, and how do you balance them? Thank you, Valentin, for this question. Before I read Jung's dream, I would read some descriptions that Jung wrote about number one and number two, then the dream, and then some reflections about my experience. Jung is 19 years old in his final school days in Basel. He must choose a profession, and he cannot. Science pulls one way, history, philosophy, and the old Egyptian world pulls the other. He is poor, he feels himself an outsider, and inside of him, two personalities are wrestling. He describes them like this. I had, in fact, two different conceptions of myself. Through number one's eyes, I saw myself as a rather disagreeable and moderately gifted young man with vaulting ambitions, an undisciplined temperament, and dubious manners. In his innermost essence, a hermit and obscurantist. On the other hand, number two regarded number one as a difficult and thankless moral task, a lesson that had to be got through somehow, complicated by a variety of faults such as spells of laziness, despondency, depression, inept enthusiasm for ideas and things that nobody valued, liable to imaginary friendships, limited, prejudiced, stupid, mathematics, with a lack of understanding for other people, vague and confused in philosophical matters, neither an honest Christian nor anything else. Number two had no definable character at all. He was a vita per acta, born, living, dead, everything in one, a total vision of life. Though pitilessly clear about himself, he was unable to express himself through the dense, dark medium of number one, though he longed to do so. When number two predominated, number one was contained and obliterated in him, just as, conversely, number one regarded number two as a region of inner darkness. Number two felt that any conceivable expression of himself would be like a stone thrown over the edge of the world, dropping soundlessly into infinite night. But in him, number two, light reigned, as in the spacious halls of a royal palace whose high casements open upon a landscape flooded with sunlight. Here were meaning and historical continuity, in strong contrast to the incoherent fortuitousness of number one's life, which had no real points of contact with its environment. So number one is the ordinary young man, ambitious, undisciplined, moody, awkward, the one who has to pass exams, earn money, and get along with people. And number two is something else entirely. A royal palace flooded with sunlight, where meaning and historical continuity reign. Number two is what Jung will later call the self. Notice how each one sees the other's darkness. Number one looks at number two and sees a region of inner darkness. Number two looks at number one and sees a dense, dark medium it cannot speak through. Keep it in mind while listening to the dream. It is at this crossroad, with the two wrestling for a decision, where the dream comes. About this time, I had a dream which both frightened and encouraged me. It was night in some unknown place, and I was making slow and painful headway against a mighty wind. Dense fog was flying along everywhere. I had my hands cupped around a tiny light, which threatened to go out at any moment. Everything depended on my keeping this little light alive. Suddenly, I had the feeling that something was coming up behind me. I looked back and saw a gigantic black figure following me. But at the same moment, I was conscious in spite of my terror, that I must keep my little light going through night and wind, regardless of all dangers. When I awoke, I realized at once that the figure was a specter of the broken, my own shadow on the swirling mists, brought into being by the little light I was carrying. I knew, too, that this little light was my consciousness, the only light I have. My own understanding is the sole treasure I possess and the greatest. Though infinitely small and fragile in comparison with the powers of darkness, it is still a light, my only light. And here is Jung's interpretation. This dream was a great illumination for me. Now I knew that number 1 was the bearer of the light, and that number 2 followed him like a shadow. My task was to shield the light and not look back at the vita per acta. This was evidently a forbidden realm of light of a different sort. I must go forward against the storm, which sought to thrust me back into the immeasurable darkness of a world where one is aware of nothing except the surfaces of things in the background. In the role of number 1, I had to go forward into study, money-making, responsibilities, entanglements, confusions, errors, submissions, defeats. The storm pushing against me was time, ceaselessly flowing into the past, which just as ceaselessly dogs our heels. It exerts a mighty suction which greedily draws everything living into itself. We can only escape from it, for a while, by pressing forward. The little light is consciousness, the ordinary, fragile, personal understanding of number 1. The storm is time itself, pushing him back towards the past. And the task is to go forward into life, making the decision, taking responsibility, making the errors, getting into relationships. Jung doesn't promise his young self success. He promises him errors and defeats, and still go forward and carry the light. Now to the question, am I too preoccupied with the self and negligent with my own small personal light? Look again on what Jung realized on waking. The gigantic black figure was a specter of the broken, his own shadow thrown onto the mist by the little light he was carrying. The dream never says the figure is evil. It says the figure is cast by the flame. Jung calls the realm of number 2 the forbidden realm of light of a different sort. In the light of consciousness, the inner realm of light appears as a gigantic shadow, the palace flooded with sunlight, seen from the outside as darkness following you. So here is the reversal. If the self has begun to loom behind you, large and dark and close, that is evidence your light is burning. There is no shadow without the flame. There is no encounter with number 2 without a number 1 that is sturdy enough to carry it. The very worry in this question, the fear of neglecting the small light, is the small light speaking. It has not gone out, but is asking to be shielded. Jung names the danger too. I must leave number 2 behind me. That was clear. But under no circumstances ought I to deny him to myself or declare him invalid. That would have been a self-mutilation. There are 2 mutilations possible here, and the balance between them moves with the seasons of life. Deny number 2, and you cut away meaning itself. You become surfaces only, routines only, but dissolve into number 2, and the light goes out. The ego loses the standpoint from which the self can be seen at all. This is the danger the question is circling. In the language of Edinger, the ego-self axis requires both poles. An ego swallowed by the self is inflation, paralysis, psychosis. The small light is what allows the self to become conscious. Lose it in devotion to the self, and the self loses its witness and human vessel. At 19, Jung's task was to go into the world and let number 2 follow as a shadow. In his second half of life, the movement reversed and number 2 became the great work. The same dream answers differently depending where you stand. So part of my answer to you is a question back. Which half of the road are you on? Valentin asked what my experience with number 1 and number 2 is, and how do I balance them. Maybe the simplest way to draw the distinction is this. Number 1 is everything connected with ordinary, mundane, down-to-earth human existence. And number 2 is everything connected with the extraordinary, the enchanting, the up-in-the-air existence, the archetypal. For me, the best way I have found to balance the two comes down to time, to planning ahead, consciously, how I will use my time. There is a line I love from Gandalf when he says to Frodo, "All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And Jung says something very similar through this dream. Time is the storm, always trying to sweep us back, and we can only escape from it for a while by pressing forward. Time management has become a key theme in my own individuation. I am someone who tends to enter flow and forget time completely. So creating boundaries in advance, deciding how my hours will be given, some to number 1 and some to number 2, is essential for me. It's what keeps me from becoming one-sided in either direction. It keeps me grounded and at the same time connected to meaning and to vocation. 2 practices carry this for me. At the start of each week, I plan its main activities beforehand, so I can see what a balanced week actually looks like. And every evening, I name the 3 most important things I would like to do tomorrow, so I can begin my day by attending to them. These small rituals ease some of the tension between the 2 personalities, and they make me more conscious of my decisions and my challenges. And one more thing, which may be the most important: patience. Change is gradual. When I try to implement more than 1 or 2 changes at a time, I am likely to experience burnout, and the whole effort collapses back into the storm. So I practice the slow process of becoming as well. One small change at a time until it becomes ground to stand on. Then the next. And yes, there is irony in using a calendar to protect the timeless, but the conscious vessel is what allows the content to be held. So to anyone standing in that wind, the task is not to worship the figure or to flee it, only to keep the hands cupped and keep walking. The self does not ask you to abandon your little light. It casts itself by means of it. The dark figure behind you is proof that your light is burning. Guard the flame and go forward. Jung asked himself where such a dream comes from, and he admits that consciously he had done nothing to produce it. Something more intelligent than himself was at work behind the scenes, which means that the dream that told him to shield number 1 was sent by number 2. The palace itself instructed him to turn away from the palace and tend to his little flame. The self, it seems, wants the ego to hold its own light. If you carry your own version of the little light and the shadowy figure behind, I invite you to share with us in the comments. If this way of sitting with dreams speaks to you, you're welcome to join one of the circles I offer. The link is below. With love.